Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye? You'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, the show where we try to find the best game within a really specific category. For example, this week we're looking for the best game that everyone on the internet tells you you should hate, but is actually pretty good, and usually according to a silent majority. Stuff like Assassin's Creed, which if you speak to most people on Twitter is unplayable garbage and everyone hates it and who cares, but is actually one of the most lucrative franchises in entertainment history. And like inspired by Dragon's Dogma 2, which if you ask people on the internet who get their opinions exclusively from dickhead YouTubers, let's face it, it's an unplayable mess that is gated behind a load of predatory microtransactions. Did you guys know this, that you can't fast travel in Dragon's Dogma 2 unless you give Capcom an extra £3?
I heard that you pay for fast travel in Dragon's Dogma 2, yes.
Yeah. You heard that. You heard that from loads of people, but it's not fucking true.
Well, it is technically true, but like
it's
only in a very
true, but like
yes.
You can call it opportunistic and you can call it cynical, but you cannot call it predatory, because it's like it's not predatory, remotely predatory. The predatory is the word everyone's using to describe. Sorry, I'm off on one now. Predatory is the word everyone is using to describe these microtransactions, and they're not predatory. They're barely advertised. They're like completely optional. So like they're literally only useful if you are playing that game and for some reason don't want to engage with any of the systems of the game. So
it's very low down the
very weird.
I don't know what you call the microtransaction totem pole. Like there are far more aggressive and egregious microtransactions in games.
It's
far
like,
more exploitative, certainly.
I'm in two minds about it, because it's like it should be criticized.
Of course, yes.
But it seems so disproportionate, especially considering the fact that like this is just the baseline level of shit that, like, I mentioned Assassin's Creed, that's had it for years. Dragon's Dogma 1 had it like 12 years ago,
right?
And
a lot of Capcom games actually have it, but they're just so kind of nothing burgers that no one remembers them. Like Devil May Cry 5 had it, Resident Evil 4 had it, and it's just like, oh, you just needed some extra element to get more money out of people here. Yeah, sure, whatever. It's not like yet. It's a good sign that they're not super relevant, that people just don't remember when you mention that.
You
like,
can tell some bean counter somewhere has just been like, you need to put this stuff in, and they've gone, right, fine. Like, we'll charge them $5 for a port crystal, and we'll do it once if they insist.
Probably literally that, yeah. Like 100%.
Really funny.
Will that get the business guys off our back? Right, yeah, let's do that, right? Make another fucking dragon or whatever. Anyway, right. So
another one.
Now that this is the most animated I've been for years, I can feel the plaque releasing from my arteries as we speak, because I've never moved this much. Okay, so the best game that the internet says you should hate but you actually don't. Mark, I feel in my bones that you've probably got a brilliant one for this, because, and please don't take this the wrong way, it's genuinely meant as a compliment, but you like some amount of shite.
Well, the swing of that.
First,
up and then
listen, as a fellow shite liker, I respect it.
First of all, yeah, certainly not wrong. Second of all, I'm just gonna quickly point out that I'm filling in for Kelsey today. Get well soon. But I wanted to make sure that I'd picked a game that I know deep down in my heart that Kelsey must love. It's right up their alley. It's Fast and Furious Showdown from 2013.
Yes.
So basically the premise that I've got for this is that nobody knows what the silent majority is. As a concept, because they're silent, the thing about them is that they don't have put out their opinion on, obviously it originated in politics and it's now video games, which are much more important. But basically the idea is that there are a huge mass of people that we don't actually know what they like. It's all of the vocal people on the Twitter or that turn up to things that we're basing all of these decisions on. And actually, there's a bunch of people that just consume things absent-mindedly, which is a good thing to base your entire society's decision-making on, I'm sure.
Right, yeah.
But yes, basically my premise is that because we don't know what any of these people like, where they live, who they are, they might well like Fast and Furious Showdown. Because it's a game that, if you pay attention to the internet, Metacritic, anywhere with a pulse, the reviews of it are terrible. If you haven't played it, it's a Fast and Furious game that basically it's designed to bridge the events between the 5th Fast and Furious film, the one where they drive some cars, and the 6th Fast and Furious film, the one where they drive some cars. And basically, it hasn't got Vin Diesel in it. It hasn't got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in it. It hasn't got Paul Walker in it. It hasn't got any.
Diesel. Isn't Vin Diesel?
No,
Yes.
no.
Does he not?
That's Fast and Furious Crossroads from 2020.
Oh,
That one has Vin Diesel in it, and he looks weird. This one does not have Vin Diesel in it.
Wow.
And
Okay.
basically, the plot of the game is just that somebody's broken into Dwayne Johnson's office to try and get kind of a bead on what he's investigating with the gangs, the kind of racing gangs that were the big thing during that period of the franchise.
Right.
And basically the first cutscene is somebody walking into an office and going, "You're not supposed to be in here going through these files." And then they just have a chat, and it cuts away to various... There's missions to set up stuff for 6. There's some replays of things that happened in 5, like the run through Rio with the bank vault, except this time it's less fun because the bank vault basically is held between 2 cars but doesn't have any physics. So it just kind of pings about in a way that's like a huge bank vault full of thingies that they've had to pull out because it's too big to do anything else with. Shouldn't really do.
I love that.
That's quite fun.
I love that. Yeah, okay. You're selling it to me, actually.
But yes, but basically that's the premise of the game. There are no interesting cameos from people. I think they've only gotten like 1 license from GM because the only cars that are licensed in it are like Dodges and Cadillacs, and the rest of them are just kind of placeholders of cars that vaguely look like Fast and Furious cars.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, and as I say, if you're a person who thinks about games critically in any kind of way, you'll play this and either think it's the most boring thing that you've ever played, or one of the worst things that you've ever played. But if you're a member of the silent majority, we have to assume that you've never played any video games before. You don't know what a video game is.
Yeah.
Basically, you're me when I was 12, and I loved Fast and Furious Showdown. So you will too.
That is a perfectly decent argument, actually.
No, but the game sounds so wank, though. So how can that be a good argument? It sounds
because
it's either boring or bad.
It's wank that only the silent majority could appreciate, which is the
Hasn't the
point.
majority of people played video games? Isn't it like stats that get thrown around all the time now? Like most people have played video games.
Yes, but a lot of that is just Candy Crush.
Yeah, none of those stats exist. None of those people referred to in those stats exist. Only the people that talk on Twitter exist.
No, but the thing is, though, that like the silent majority, I think they're given that name, as you mentioned, because they're silent, but also they're a majority because they make these things popular and successful. Like the silent majority is what makes, Love Island and The Bachelor or whatever get 7 seasons or whatever. You may not think about them when you think of like, oh, what's the best pieces of media that came out in year whatever. You never think, oh man, that season of The Bachelor when Johnny left whatever. No one thinks about that. But they're so popular and they keep making them because there's a silent majority that watches them. And I don't know that the Fast and Furious games, really any of them, are appreciated by the masses in the same way that the movies are.
Yeah, but I think that they're games that can only be appreciated by the masses, by the silent majority.
Okay, that's fair.
And I mean, stuff like Love Island, fair enough, it has lots of people like it, and that's the thing. But even with stuff like that, it's because it has that vocal people on Twitter that I think it really takes off to the degree that it does. Like, it's because you've got people constantly posting about. I've forgotten what you said, but Steve breaking it with other Steve, that kind of thing.
Yes, Stephen. Yeah. I genuinely can't remember. I can't just think of any Nancy, Stephen Nancy. I don't know. Just someone is called Nancy on that show probably at some point.
So just to be clear, your argument is that because you can't hear or find anyone who likes this game, it must be a champion of the silent majority. Mm-hmm. This like vague silent majority.
I mean, it must have done all right. I would
must
imagine.
It have?
I mean, they kept making. They made more Fast and Furious video games.
Yeah, but the next one was so drastically different, right? There's the movie tie-ins.
That's just because they knew they couldn't live up to the brilliance of Showdown. You'd just be a pale imitation.
The next game had like Vin Diesel jumping like a weird like 2D like practically PS2 sprite of Vin Diesel jumping from one car to another in slow motion. Is that the Game Awards? It was like one of the highlights of the Game Awards.
Six people or something from the movie cast.
Yeah,
surprise. And it was made by Slightly Mad Studios, which is not a small. Like a genuine racing studio.
But that's not what you want with movie tie-ins. You don't want people from the actual films. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's kind of the only thing you do want, I think, maybe.
No, you don't. You want a side story that's adjacent. Otherwise, you're just going over old ground, right?
But it's sure.
I have to say, just as an aside, right? It's only now that I appreciate how difficult this game is from the perspective of you guys, because now that I have to pick my own, what would have been my pick, I find it really fucking hard. And the hardest thing I find is every time I think of something that fits the topic, I'm like, well, I can't pick that because that's an Assassin's Creed game, and I go on about Assassin's Creed all the fucking time. Or I can't pick that because I'm known to like that. I'm trying to do something interesting. I can't pick that because I picked it last week for something else. And it's like, oh God, I only like fucking 7 games. That's the thing that...
Just embrace it.
Yeah. But like, it's going to make the special Jim bit of the podcast just like, oh, I wonder which Assassin's Creed game he's going to go on about. But I just want to pre-warn everyone.
It's going to be free.
That I've picked an Assassin's Creed game for my part of the topic because I literally can't think of anything else that fits this specific bill, and I'm really, really sorry, but I'm gonna have to. I have no option but to be the most boring version of myself that there is. Right, okay. Who's next? Right, Sharif, what have you got? Is this gonna be fucking Battlefield?
No, because Battlefield is not popular enough to justify that, unfortunately. I wish it was. I'd be like, no, unfortunately.
Maybe Hardline. Hardline was a controversial release, huh?
Hardline was a controversial, but it also wasn't very popular. I think the operative word here is that these games are, it's the sort of like the Roblox thing where it's like they're quietly very popular, where you never hear about them, but they're quietly making billions of dollars. And that used to be Fortnite for a while, and that used to be. Like WoW, for example, it's not in the conversation, but quietly making a lot of money. I will speak to something on, I have some experience with, and it is unfortunately, because it comes from the Assassin's Creed tree of games, let's say, which is something that is, has no edges at all. It may as well be a sphere, and is made to appeal to every possible person who even remotely understands what a video game is, even people who don't. I can't remember who said it recently, but a game made for everyone is a game made for no one. And I think in our modern era, because yes, Assassin's Creed started this trend. A lot of Ubisoft games rightfully get dunked on for that. But I think when you use that formula and put it into a different thing and perpetuate it, is when what really pisses me off, because like, okay, if there's one thing in the industry, like, there's the Call of Duty, you can set it aside and move on with your life. No one is trying to replicate Call of Duty. The problem is a lot of games are trying and succeeding at replicating the Assassin's Creed formula. And all this preamble is to say the Horizon games, the PlayStation exclusive Horizon Forbidden West and Zero Dawn, those games are...
What the fuck is going on here? Are you picking Horizon Zero Dawn?
Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, so just both of them, like, really.
Okay,
that's the funny thing. You could pick either, and both perfectly fit, right? Like
those games are, they're Assassin's Creed games with a female protagonist, and an interesting setup for a world.
Yeah.
But that does not go beyond that. Like the interesting setup for a world is like the hook that gets you in. It's like you telling someone, it's like saying like, oh, it's a story of revenge. Like if you tell someone, oh, Dune is a story of revenge, they're like, there are billions of stories of revenge. Why is this one interesting? But you say, oh, sandworms, Bene Gesserit, prophecies, messiahs. That makes it interesting, right? Mm-hmm. But if you just come at them and say like, oh, well, this is just a kind of a revenge story. So if you distill this game and say like, oh, it's sort of like an Assassin's Creed was robot versions of animals. Not so, but you oh well, this was after the collapse, and there's a mystery of that. And that, to me, as someone who played and finished Zero Dawn, was the thing that got me through it. Playing it and exploring it was just the most boring thing that I could have done just to get to that story. To the point that I just skipped just parts of it just to get to the next story beat, because I just like the mystery was the thing that really carried me through. But those games are very much like you go around the world, you are collecting dozens of materials, which you use for crafting, which is done very in a very accessible way with a lot of, this is very much open the wheel, hold the button, you made 4 arrows, open the wheel, hold the button, you made 4 arrows that shoot fire.
I think that's the sound of Mark typing his resignation, by the way.
And it has combat that is mainly using the bow. You dodge around a bit. You shoot off some bits of these robot dinosaurs or whatever, robot animals. It's very much like nothing in it is exceptional. Nothing in it is super bad that you're like, oh, I can't deal with this. This is terrible. It all just happens, and you're just along for the ride. And then you check the time, and you've played 4 hours. And so those games are designed for the silent majority because they are effectively, they appeal to their almost to their schedule as much as they appeal to their preferences. Which, like, if you're someone with a family, if you're someone with a demanding job, and you go home and you have maybe an hour to play a video game, maybe 2 hours, and then a couple more hours over the weekend, you're not thinking critically about games. You're not thinking in the same way that we think about games. You may not even recognize that there are better versions of this out there. It's a thing that looks flashy. It's a thing that everyone's talking about on your console, which is a PlayStation, the most popular, console. You're gonna buy it. You're gonna have some fun with it. I don't want to begrudge people enjoying those things. I just look at them, and every time I sit down with one of them, I'm just like baffled as to how anyone would dedicate as much time to them as that they did, and how that success is enough to justify a sequel. There was a really good Voidburger video from a couple of years ago about like how the art of that game, which everyone praises as like this, oh my god, this game looks great. And her argument was, actually, those games don't look great because it's the gaudy version of art, where it's like everything looks great, that nothing looks great. And her argument was, because the game looks so photorealistic and because it looks so beautiful, they have to gamify how you can climb a wall by putting these like the yellow paint, and they have to gamify a bunch of other things like, hey, look, don't miss this. Whereas a better design game would do this organically through its environment design, in the same way that a From Software game, where it's like, oh, I'm seeing something in the distance. The game doesn't need to tell you anything about it, but you are drawn by that, and the way the terrain, and the way that you're cresting over a hill, and the way that you loop back around something. All of these are elements that are carefully considered to give you a certain type of direction as you move around. Whereas a game like Horizon is like maxing out the graphical sliders. Everything has to look so good, but then you're like, okay, well, where's the game? And then it's like, yellow paint, follow the yellow paint. And so you are effectively erasing all the work that these artists did to try and be like, but we're still making a video game. Whereas you could, but one of them takes a little bit, but when you're making so much content, you don't have the time to carefully curate something like that. And I just look at those games, and it's just what they're doing to like the act of open world games, where now it's almost like an insult. It's an open world map game. It's like, oh my god, I'm dozing off already. When that may not necessarily be the case. Like Dragon's Dogma 2 is an open world game. Elden Ring is an open world game. But if you don't know anything else about them, and I tell you, Jim, listen, I've got this open world game from that, you immediately slammed the door shut and you just moved on. Like, no, it's the same thing about like the revenge plot earlier. I just think that those games, they could be better. They could have an edge to them that's more interesting, which shock and horror is going to drive some people away. But it's going to also attract other people to this. That's going to be like, yes, but those games have this element that I don't think any other game has. Blah 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 blah. So yeah, the Horizon games just baffle me why they continue to be popular.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid argument for those, because like they're not badly made. Like they're not. There's good. Clearly talented people working on these. Yeah. Like they're not. It's perfectly competent, but it's like, but it's competence above anything else. Like there's a lot of incompetence in Dragon's Dogma 2, for example, right? Well, not incompetence, but there's a lot of stuff in Dragon's Dogma 2 that's janky. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's zero jank whatsoever in Horizon. It is fucking perfect.
Yes.
Like, it is so well produced, and it's slick, and it squeezes every drop out of the hardware it's designed for, and it runs without a hitch, and it is just like it's like video games, the video game, right?
Right.
Whereas Dragon's Dogma 2, like, runs on fucking gaffer tape and a prayer, and all the systems that are interacting are constantly threatening to fall over. And I bet they were still falling over right up until they were 2 weeks out of release, right? You know, like the original Red Dead Redemption. Like, you know, that game just did not fucking work until the minute they pushed out the door. Yep. I bet Dragon's Dogma 2 was the same. But as a result, it's so much more interesting because it kind of, bits of it don't work, and it
gives it character.
It's got character,
it does,
absolutely,
nuance, and things like that. Whereas like there's no character nuance with Horizon Zero Dawn. As you say, it looks perfect. It's the difference between like going to the fucking National Gallery and looking at like real art versus going into fucking TK Maxx and looking at the shit they sell pre-framed, and it's like a black and white fucking photograph of New York, and it looks nice when you first look at it, but it's actually like it's saying nothing. Anyway, fucking that was really good, Sharif.
The problem. Just to add on to that, like Sharif's right. It must be silent majority popular because it's somehow they release a game next to like some other massive release. Yeah, that everyone who's really into games is like, oh man, this is going to be fantastic. I can't wait. Yeah, I can't believe Horizon's been like fucked again, and yet Horizon always seems to keep coming back and
it keeps making that fucking bread.
So we have evidence. We have like historical evidence to prove that there is a group of people who like Horizon. Yeah, and like you said, it must be the most bland, like boring people of all time.
Martin wants to say something, I think.
The problem is that the thing that I Googled, apologies for the fact that my keyboard is just a man falling down the stairs, but the thing that I Googled was the Metacritic for Zero Dawn.
Yeah.
And, like, 89% generally favourable from critics.
Yeah.
Generally favourable from users. Not enough people on the internet hate it. Like, everybody just thinks it's fine.
It's
going to be a thing that people on the internet hate.
I think we're talking about like Twitter cynics, though, aren't we? The people who just can't let you enjoy things. I guess.
But also, those games are so hard to knock down because they're not like
there's nothing to criticize.
Yeah, there's a lot.
They're visually great. They play great. The story's good. They look nice on your new console. So like you play it and you're like, okay, and then you kind of just nod your head for 20 hours.
Right,
if the only thing that you can say about them is it's not quite Elden Ring, it's not that much, but it does just feel like we're drawing straws a little bit. Like, given that Elden Ring is one of the best games of all time.
But that's not necessarily true because
it's not Morrowind, though, is it?
Dragon's Dogma and Elden Ring, I think, are good examples of doing open world differently and making it interesting on its own. And I think the real dig against those games, the Horizon games and Assassin's Creed to a larger extent, is that they don't try to do any of that. They're just sticking to their formula because that's what's going to guarantee the most success and it's guaranteed the biggest appeal. And that's my real issue with them, is that they are resting on their laurels, and even a lot of the laurels are not their own.
When Sharif sticks the boot into Assassin's Creed, I'm left powerless because one of my usual defenses of Assassin's Creed is, yeah, but like, have you ever experienced the majesty of the pyramids? Of course he fucking has. He used to live next door to them. Can't say anything. So okay, Connor, what have you got?
There's been a lot of
I really hope it's something equally stupid, but not like something you would hide from your Steam library.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about Twitter, and fair enough. It's a good barometer of what the most obnoxious wankers in the world do think about video games, including us, all of us. But I'd like to go further back. I feel like there's a lot of great games in this sort of category that are like a pre-Twitter nightmare that we can delve into and are quite exciting. That's why my game is The Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. An absolute banger. Reviewed badly. People hated it. They're like, oh, it doesn't run very well. It's like, you get this IP, right?
Badly?
It got reviewed really badly. It was like nominated as by GameSpot as one of the ugliest looking Unreal Engine games ever made. People didn't like it at all. Picture this, everyone who's not familiar, right? Okay, you've got this beloved fantasy franchise, RPG games, right? Pretty good, made by some vague European company that is now long dead, thank God.
Yeah.
Bought by Ubisoft, and they're like, we want to do something cool with this IP. People like this RPG franchise. What should we do with it? Let's make a first-person action game and kind of strip a bunch of the RPG elements out and make it different and put a big orc on the front, like an old graphics card.
Yeah.
And they did just that. And it was actually really solid, but people didn't like it at all. It was like critically like, but where's the RPG stuff? But in Dark Messiah, Might and Magic, it's perhaps the genre that's most appealing to the silent majority, first person, bit of magic, bit of fighting, collapsible environments, environmental damage, you know, that's a sort of mass appeal nonsense that Battlefield sold its entire legacy on. But like, it's so good. They get like, you'll be attacked by like 5 orcs, right? And if you run at them, they'll beat you up because that's kind of what they do. But if you go around the corner and use ice magic on the floor, you can make the floor slippery, and you'll see like these 5 dudes, kind of like in an old school comedy skit, run through the hallway, slip up on themselves, and fall down the stairs one after each other. You can throw barrels at scaffolding, and scaffolding will collapse. It's just mint, mate. It's so good, but it was like totally like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, whatever, by a bunch of websites. I'm
actually amazed, right? Because when you said that, I was like, it didn't review badly. Surely
people didn't
not.
like it at all.
That's a modern classic. But I've looked at the Metacritic and it
really
got
good.
a fucking pasting.
It got pasted, dude.
Yeah.
People didn't like it at all. But I, full disclosure, came to this game far later than that, and I was like, this is so much fun.
Yeah,
this is
and
like
the kick
so
especially.
much fun. Yeah,
top
and
10,
the kick,
top 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Video game kicks of all time.
Like not improved upon until arguably like Bulletstorm, I guess.
I'm not gonna say it's Arcane's best game, but
it's up there.
It's up there.
It's like such.
It's better than fucking.
There's a lot of words. Better than definitely. There's a lot of words about like what makes a good sandbox, right? And I think a sandbox is a game that if you do a really good one, it's when you can be like, I wonder if I can kick this barrel into this orc and it go flying out the window.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
And it worked. And this was what, like 2012? Like, it's just like, it's a beautiful game and people didn't know what they were on about. And in my opinion, it should be in the same sort of avenue of outrage as people looking back at God Hand reviews.
Yes. God Hand is a good example as well.
People, same thing there. It just wasn't really, people didn't click with it, despite that game being an absolute masterclass in what it was doing. And while I do think God Hand is perhaps better than Dark Messiah of Light and Magic, if you had to put a gun to my head, in fact, that would have been a really good pick for this podcast. Oops. I think Dark Messiah of Might and Magic is like fantastic and deserves all the praise in the world that it didn't get.
Absolutely.
And I think the people loved it because it was a first-person action game, and people love eating that slop up like it's nothing.
You know, it's mad how, like, because I wasn't in the business when that came out, and I wasn't even massively into. I'd only just properly got into video games. Because I loved video games when I was like a kid, and then I went through a long spate of just not really engaging much with them at all.
Being an adult,
yeah. And then I decided to reverse that policy of being an adult because I thought this actually sucks shit. I'm gonna start playing video games again. So I didn't know any of the. I didn't know really the Dark Messiah. I didn't know the Might and Magic series either. So like I knew of it as a brand, but I didn't know. I had no prior knowledge of it being this RPG thing that had been bastardized to make this action game or whatever, right? But the thing, the purveying thought with me and a few of my friends I had at the time, we all played it on 360 when it came out on 360, was that like, this is fucking great. I wish Oblivion had this combat. Yeah. It was like, can 100%. You imagine how good it would be if it had if it was like Oblivion, but it had this combat and you were kicking people through windows and shit, as opposed to just sort of slowly walking backwards and doing that, which is all Elder Scrolls combat.
That's the charm.
Yeah.
It's quite funny that you mentioned that, actually, because I feel like maybe this is common knowledge, but I feel like one of Capcom's goals with the original Dragon's Dogma, obviously that carried over to 2, was that what if we made Morrowind or the Elder Scrolls, but with more interesting combat? And you look at those games, and it's like, oh, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much like that's pretty much the design document for the first Dragon's Dogma. Is what if we made those games, because we're good at actual game stuff, whereas those guys are good at narrative and world and all that kind of, all the shit that we don't really bother with because it's going past 700 miles an hour when you're playing fucking Devil May Cry or whatever. But what if we slowed things down a bit and we did a Skyrim-paced game but that has our combat? And the result was something weird and wonderful and beautiful, and continues to be beautiful, frankly, despite some people's insistence that you need to pay £400 to fast travel in it, which you don't. But like, it's an interesting one. I guess on that level, actually, probably the dream of having an Oblivion with combat that's as good as Dark Messiah is literally Dragon's Dogma, even though the games have nothing to do with each other and they're totally different.
It's funny how it circles back around, how like history has proven me right.
All right, okay. We've got 3 really good picks here. I am going to pick something now. Okay.
I'm just playing it in my mind.
I'm trying to envision it.
Once again, I hate this part of the podcast. It's easier when people come here with shit picks, but that's not happened today, unfortunately. I'm going to go for, and it's probably going to upset you a lot, Connor. I don't think it'll upset Mark so much. But I'm going to go with... Actually, no, I'm not going to do that.
Just pick Sharif.
Oh, come on, you've teased it now. Come on.
Sharif. You fucked it, Sharif, because I was hit with the realization there that I was about to pick Horizon Zero Dawn over an Arcane game. And that I'm not going to do that.
Then you remembered, you're like, wait, am I actually going to
make
Horizon win anything?
It's because the best game on offer here.
Yes, but their Arcane games are known for not selling, for not being liked by the silent majority. Come on.
People love first-person fantasy.
But I was a member of the silent. I mean, we're talking about, right? Okay, right. When this game came out, here's my reasoning. Right, because it's what Mark was talking about earlier, and you to some extent. Those guys who just have their fucking Sony Bravia, and they don't really engage with the enthusiast press. They just they have a game that they like, and they don't really give a shit. They don't know what the fuck Metacritic is, right? That was me when this game came out, and I fucking loved it. So I guess you could argue that I was part of the silent majority. And the thing about the silent majority, and this is what Mark was saying, is it's like it's a concept that fundamentally doesn't exist, and you just project whatever you want onto it. Ultimately, right? I don't think that's quite what you were saying, Mark, but
that's essentially what I was saying. Yeah. I am enjoying the fact that you're basically saying I'm the silent majority, which is I hadn't expected you to go that far, but all right.
So yeah, I think like given that, accepting that the silent majority thinks whatever the fuck you want it to, based on whatever you're trying to argue at the time, and given that the situation we're talking about, I was literally in that situation when this game came out, and given that this game is clearly fucking better than the other two, it's got to be Dark Messiah. I can't fucking believe it. It's got to be Connor.
I mean, it's brilliant, right? I like how this is somehow circled back around how the silent majority is used in politics, like I think Mark mentioned, which is that it's just whoever you fucking want it to be.
Yeah.
Whatever, some vague force
the
populist...
silent majority have legitimate concerns about immigration. That silent majority.
I know the stats and the evidence don't align with what I'm saying, but the silent majority absolutely do, and they're silent, which is why I can't prove it. But that Messiah might have magic.
This is the second time I've lost to a game that is named after the band that did, I believe, a thing called Love, and like I can't deal with that. I can just see the lead singer of that band just smiling at me, and it's insulting.
He's a YouTube channel now. It's all right. Apparently.
Of course he does.
Yeah, he reviews people singing and stuff. He did he did this 20-minute video about there was footage of John Bon Jovi. On his latest tour, and how John Bon Jovi has basically lost the ability to sing because of entropy. Nothing to be ashamed of. But obviously his job is to fucking get up and sing. So he's in a bit of a quandary as old John Bon Jovi. And Justin Hawkins, that's his name? He did a really...
Hawkins, yeah.
Yeah, he did a really... it wasn't a takedown, it wasn't a piss take, it was a really, like, empathetic sort of explanation of, like, this is why he's struggling with these notes. This is what age does to somebody's voice, especially someone who uses their voice so much in their youth. This is why he has to carry on doing it. And it's fucking, and it was really like please don't, like, of all the things to hate John Bon Jovi for, don't make it that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that fucking hell, that was a tangent. Sorry. But yeah, so what are we getting at here? Justin Hawkins, all right bloke actually.
Seems nice enough.
Wrote one of the best ever Christmas songs. Like, you can't take that away from The Darkness. I mean, I remember when The Darkness hit and everyone was like, oh, they're just like Queen. It's like, well, they're fucking not, are they?
Oh my god, who said that?
Everyone at the time, man. Fucking
really?
Everyone. Yeah, they were like, yeah, man, they sound like Queen. No, they fucking didn't.
What are you on about?
And everyone else was just like, but this is just silent. This is just Spinal Tap, but like played slightly straight.
Please tell me that you were on that side of the argument. Please say that you weren't like, this sounds like Queen.
I wasn't like, this sounds like Queen.
Okay, good. Okay.
Me and my mate were having a conversation about it back in the day, and my mate, who was a genuine fucking massive Queen fan, was like, he was like, the guitarist in The Darkness is all right, but Brian May built his first guitar 8 years old. He was like really animated. Yeah, they were nothing. They didn't sound anything like. My mum was going. I remember my mum going on about that. She bought the album on the basis that they sounded like Queen.
That's unbelievable. What were people want?
They're the Horizon Zero Dawn to Queen's Elden Ring. They're just like it, but incredibly bland and without any of the appeal.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not fair. They were good. They just hit high notes. That was it.
They had one good song where he shagged an octopus on a UFO. That was it.
He did famously shag an octopus.
That was the peak. There was nothing after that.
No, man. Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells End remains a classic and will forever.
Stupid fucking band. I'm so happy they got some amount of money. It's just, it makes me feel good.
Well, anyway. That's what I love about The Darkness, because they became that fucking exact kind of fucking Slade, or Christmas is coming, time for some money. Like, they do fuck all for the whole year, and then Christmas happens, and they're just like, oh, "Fuck, I can pay the bills." I love it. So anyway, that was another tangent. Right, we need to do my.
That was a good one. Now we like that one.
It was, yeah. We're gonna keep that in, Alex. I'm sorry about that. Right, I'm gonna do my pick now, which means it is time for. Unfucking believable. I was gonna play a bit of Duke Nukem, right?
Yeah.
And I forgot where the power button was.
Oh wow!
And it only just booted up when the jingle finished. All right, okay. So I teased earlier that I'm afraid I'm gonna have to just really fucking Jim Trinker this and go on about Assassin's Creed, right? And I'm sorry, and I know that like Sharif and I are very fond of each other, but I know that Sharif does consider this a moral failing. So, like there's two things about me that really piss Sharif off, and it's liking Assassin's Creed and being very, very lackadaisical about like my attitude to coffee. I don't drink coffee properly, and it really annoys him. But I'm going to talk about Assassin's Creed now, right? Assassin's Creed Unity, right, is right. Assassin's Creed Unity is a fucking incredible game, right? It is. I previewed that game, and then I went to the infamous like week-long review event that they used to have for these things, and we played the game in like. Well, firstly, for the preview, we went over to the military hospital in Paris, which is a building in the game, because it's like an almost one-to-one recreation of the center of Paris, and the one of the challenges that they set us, which isn't like denoted in the game at any point, but it was just an environmental challenge that they set us. They were like, "Can you find the room that you're currently sitting in? And if you can find it, you can get like I don't know what it was. I think it was like you can get an extra Kit Kat at lunch or something, right?"
Nice.
So obviously I was like, "Fucking yeah,
yeah." How do we get these British gamers excited? Let's give them a cheap.
I'm sure it was something like that, if I remember rightly. Someone else who was there might remember better, but there was definitely some kind of really shit prize for finding the room we were sitting in the game. And I remember thinking that I really fucking want that prize, right? And I'm sure it was like a fucking Kit Kat or something equally rubbish.
Brilliant.
But anyway, I didn't actually find it in the end, but someone else did. But it was enough to be like, holy shit! Like you can literally go to like where we are sitting, and it was a very faithful sort of recreation of the space and everything else, and then like the rest of the game is pretty much like that. And so like it was the first Assassin's Creed game for me where, because up until that point they'd been set in places where, you know, I'd never visited. I'd been to Rome once, but like it was the first time I really got a sense of like, you know, like it was this total immersion. Like I'm sitting in the middle of Paris and I'm playing this game that's based in Paris, and I feel like the lines between fucking like my physical reality and the game are really fucking blurred here. And it was combined with like a bit of sleep deprivation, it was incredible. But I love Unity, and like I said, we had this like week-long review event. We were playing that game in like 15-hour shifts because we had to finish it right before we went home. So it was like you were being like just plied with coffee and sat in front of a fucking Xbox, and it was like playing a video game equivalent of being down a fucking mine, but obviously not as bad as that, right? And but it was incredible. But it was really like. And I remember having conversations with like Louise Blaine and people like that about like, this is incredible though, right? Assassin's Creed has never done this to this scale before. Like to recreate a real physical space with this much fidelity. It feels like this is a step beyond what we've had, and it's a real kind of showcase for what was then like current / next gen. Game comes out, everyone fucking hates it, right? I've given it like an 8 on Video Gamer because like there are gameplay things about it that I feel are lacking, but generally I think it's an amazing experience. I give it an 8, and I got a literal death threat. I got really like the usual sort of shitty emails calling you all the names, and like just people being horrific on Twitter and all that usual kind of stuff that you get when people latch on to something, right? I was being paid off by Ubisoft.
That's interesting though, because usually you get death threats for giving a game too low a score.
Well, yeah, this is it. But this is the reverse.
But they were like, yeah, why are you having fun with this historical mode? Please kill yourself.
And you responded, they put me in prison when I played this. I was literally stuck in a room in the game, and my entire reality spontaneously combusted. Why don't you understand?
Exactly. This is essentially Stockholm syndrome here. Have pity. But like, no. It was wild, and it was one of the first times, because by that point, obviously, I was very much in the industry, but it was like my first sort of year as a professional within it, and I was like, I was shocked actually about how vicious people could be about, because it's just a fucking game though, right? It was like my first taste of all that kind of real vitriol that you can get for just sort of being perceived to be on the wrong side of an issue when it comes to social media or whatever, particularly when it comes to gaming. And I forever remain gobsmacked by it, because like it's based on, all right, people played it when it came out and some people got bugs, the infamous missing face bug and stuff like that. I didn't get that I must have spent like 45, 50 hours in a pre-release Xbox version, and there were no bugs. There were no issues whatsoever. Again, it was one of these things where the game didn't quite hit 30 FPS, and so people on the internet decided it was unplayable. It doesn't run, but because you know how like if it's not running at a fucking buttery smooth 60, some people will tell you it's just unplayable, which is clearly not true, right? Like presentation is important and speed and power are important, but they're not everything when it comes to these sorts of things. You can make allowances for it, and it's like I just felt that it was a really good game that, you had to make some allowances for some of its shortcomings, but isn't that like most games? And I think it remains, it's gone down in history as one of the good Assassin's Creeds when it comes to people who, like, I'm going to call them the Assassin's Creed community, right? Right. But when you talk to Assassin's Creed fans, like on Reddit or whoever, Unity is not considered to be like one of the shit ones. People have a real fondness for Unity for a lot of the reasons I talked about. Just how amazing it was at recreating Paris as a space, Revolution. Paris.
Yeah. To be fair, in the years since Unity, we have seen far worse Assassin's Creed.
I think Unity is one of the few games that hold up to this day in a lot of aspects. I think, in my personal opinion, it's the last one they tried to do something interesting with. It is perhaps the most. It is a culture anomaly. Almost, it's their most interesting Assassin's Creed because it stands on this precipice of all this technical advancement that they did with animations and with the crowd density stuff that pushed the CPUs of the weak PS4 and Xbox One to limits that caused the frame rate issues that you talked about that they had never done before or since. And they pushed a lot of the narrative element of like the cutscenes. Like a lot of things got massive upgrades in that game. There were like almost like a cover system to it. There was the multiplayer co-op to it, but also it was the game that I don't know if it cemented the icon barf that we have now, where people would just zoom out and take a screenshot and it's like icons overlapping with other icons. So
that was the initial. It was that someone pulled out of the Paris map.
Yes.
And that was I know the exact screenshot you're talking about. It was that was the start of it, I think.
So Unity got like the short end of the stick there, even though it had a lot of brilliance in it, and it had like a really cool female character. I think Emily, her name was. There's a really good piece that
she was great. Yeah,
from her VG247 deputy editor Brenna Hellier wrote about her, which I really liked, and it was like that game got a lot of undeserved shit, and it is genuinely an interesting game in so many ways. But again, it's coupled with all this other baggage that just really weighed it down. But I think it will go down as like one of the most, even aside from the recreation of like Paris and all the I mean, they use the that game's version of the cathedral that burned. I can't remember the name of it. Notre Dame, yes. To rebuild it after that fire. So yes, even aside from that, it was just such a unique and interesting game, and it was really, really disappointing to see it go down the way it did, like, because it could have been
I
like so many of those games. It could have been like you could have made this like a 15-hour game that was just a little bit more focused.
And it was it's just I will never, like, to this day I'm still baffled by how fierce the reaction was to it. Maybe I'm misremembering some things, but I'm genuinely like it just didn't deserve that level of shit. But but like you say, it is you play it now, and now that like sort of the hardware that we've got to play these things on have like surpassed that game's technical ambition. Like you play that game now and you can see, like, you run it in fucking 4K or whatever, and you can see like all of this kind of detail that they were trying to achieve. Not to talk about it purely from like a graphical or a technical standpoint, but that is a big part of it. You can see that there was like there were a lot of like really good ideas there that just couldn't quite be done. Maybe it was a little bit ahead of its time. But then, as you say, a lot of the Assassin's Creed games that have come since have been, if anything, quite fucking backward looking in their approach. So
I also think Unity is perhaps one of the better ones. But for the sake of winning this podcast, I would say that the silent majority probably don't have your passion for history and looking around France. I think
never been so fucking. Feel like that was really withering.
No, because you were really earnest about your love for this stuff, and I don't want to just come in like what you love, the things you treasure in your life are wank. It's like a mean thing to do. Because they're not. Like, you're totally valid. I do think that the gameplay faults in Unity at the time of release probably overshadowed a lot of the good efforts towards being historically
Excuse me, it had a button for going up and a button for going down, which was a huge fucking innovation in Assassin's Creed. I don't think you realize.
It also followed up Black Flag, which is like an old
horrible.
So
which is actually good.
I thought that was hilarious.
It's kind of like
you couldn't ask for a worse place to release that game. Like,
I mean, when
Black
they
Flag
announced
was so
Unity,
astounding.
When they announced Unity, one of my friends, Nickel, he had been playing Black Flag and was swept up into the hype of that game like everyone else, and he was like, "What? It's fucking the next game set in fucking landlocked Paris," and then like that was it. It was already before it had even, set foot on the shelves. It was already destined to be a bit of a stinker.
Yeah, it was unfortunate.
It is genuinely interesting to look back at like the Ubisoft of that generation, of that era, of the overshooting and overly ambitious like that. Unity and Watch Dogs, the original Watch Dogs, kind of like almost two sides of the same coin, where they stand as this like, oh no, we're gonna do all this cool things, and then the both games come out and are like, this is nothing like you promised.
Yeah,
and also they're boring. So it's that's those games are almost like a cultural affect of their time in that generation.
Yeah.
And now, Ubisoft is still ambitious and still pushing the needle forward in their own way with the industry's first ever quadruple A video game.
Yes.
Yeah. I love the quadruple A follow, the long-awaited follow-up to Black Flag.
I am proud of you, though, Jim. I thought you were going to go Assassin's Creed 3, and you didn't. So, congratulations.
I would never go Assassin's Creed 3 because that game is genuinely pig shit. So, no, I don't know. I don't think it's terrible. I just think it's Assassin's Creed 3. I think for a lot of obvious reasons, I think Assassin's Creed 3 goes down very well in America, and I think Americans really love that game because largely they are brought up with a certain reverence for the revolutionary period for very understandable reasons, right? Birth of a Nation and all that. So I get it, but it is fucking rubbish. And they're doing an Assassin's Creed game where they have to build this whole system where you do the rooftop jumping and all that. They have to find a way to make that work with trees because there's no fucking buildings, because like it's only been colonized like within a generation ago. So it's like the tallest thing in America at that point is like a fucking church in Boston or whatever, and then it's just fields and guys cutting about like with shite in their pants or whatever. It's not like, like Accra and fucking Jerusalem have been like dense population centers for thousands of years. So Assassin's Creed works there. It doesn't work in what was literally still the New World, and there's fucking nothing apart for some fucking stuff that people had just sort of plonked down and go, I guess that'll do until we have a proper civilization. I don't know. But yeah, so I think it's a terrible setting for an Assassin's Creed game. But people love it because of Paul Revere and all that. You get to do the Paul Revere thing, don't you? That's in there, isn't it? The fucking the infamous horse he rides, where he rides the horse.
I'll be honest, I played a game for 2 hours and I was ready to wank. I played Assassin's Creed 3 for 2 hours and I was like, well...
It has maybe the strongest opening of any Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah, I was like, I'm done.
Well, the 8 hours where you play in Haytham Kenway and it's brilliant, and then you have to play as his son and it's fucking shite. Yeah,
I thought that was really strong.
Yeah. Great opening, and a really ballsy one as well. To be like, it's 8 hours long. It is twice the length of Lawrence of Arabia, and we're only now getting the opening titles. That's ballsy. Unfortunately, that it kind of fucking nosedives from there. But I really, really wanted to. I really hope that they would one day do like a Haytham Kenway spin-off where you're just like,
Haytham,
you're like, you're basically like Georgian kind of James Bond, and you're cutting about stabbing people in theaters and stuff. But it never came to be. I'm gonna have to let you guys go back to your actual jobs because I've had you for an hour now. So. But thank you so much for listening. We will eventually have a paid version of the podcast, which will be a longer extended version, as well as the standard version, which will always be free. But until then, please give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. We'll have more info about that in the coming weeks. We were going to do it, and then the Easter holidays were happening, and then we were like, well, let's just do it some other time. So that's what's going on there. But and please don't listen to people about Dragon's Dogma 2. Like, if you do feel that strongly about microtransactions, then don't buy it. But it's fine. I promise you don't have to spend any more money in that game than the asking price for the fucking game itself. Like, it's fine. I just want to be one of the 7 people on YouTube that's actually saying that because like there's so much misinformation out there. Also, Rise of the Ronin is pretty good. Anyway, all right. Thanks very much, guys. Speak to you later.
Bye.
Bye.